the Bank.
Hello, welcome back to another week of Money in the Bank. This is Angie. Here with me today I have Brett.
Hey guys, welcome back.
So I've actually had a couple questions coming in of like, all right, so you did this budget series. Is the podcast over now? No, it's not over. We're just getting started. That's like 101, and we have so many more topics for you guys, so many more lessons to learn. We've gotten a couple requests in already for topics in the future, and we're going to get to all of those. But we're really excited to be bringing you more content. This is just the beginning, so we're not going anywhere. We're really excited about this. So let's jump into this week. So we did this whole budget series, and I've had a lot of people be like, okay, so how much do you guys actually spend on groceries or this or that? So this podcast is kind of special because we are exposing our entire monthly budget for the last month. We've crunched all the numbers. We have, what our projected budget was, what our actual budget was. And this is everything, guys. We're not holding anything back. There's no extra money that we're spending. It's all getting laid out on the table today. So just to kind of start, Brett, have you budgeted your entire life, or is this something kind of more recent for you?
So I've always been, careful with where my money goes and conscious of it. Like I said before, using services like Mint.com, I thought was the best thing since sliced bread when I found that on the internet that keeps track of where your money is going, even usage of your credit card before the credit cards were even managing categories of where your money was going into, like restaurants and gas and all that stuff, right? So I was all about getting that done, figuring out where my money went, keeping track of how much I had, putting it in different bank accounts, and I was a pretty big stickler about putting budgets together.
Yeah, so I would say I typically haven't been a huge budgeter, which would surprise most people because I swear I force all of my friends to let me budget for them because I love it so much. But personally, I don't usually set a budget. I more so in general have an idea of what my spending should be, and I save first. And so then anything that goes to my bank account, I can spend. But I haven't really changed that amount that I can spend since back when I worked at Mancino's when I was 16, right? So even as my income has gone up, I just shift more and more over to savings. So it's kind of been a new thing for me. I think, the last few months I've been trying to track our expenses better and set goals for us to hit every month. And that's kind of newer. In the past, I just kind of am I have a relative idea of how much I'm spending, and it's nothing ridiculous. And I check in every month to be what areas did I spend a lot in? But it's more hindsight. And so now I'm kind of trying to be okay, I'm going to plan this month, this is what I want to spend in every category, and manage it more so as I go throughout the month, and that's a little bit newer for me. So let's just dive right into it. So let's start with projected, I guess. Well, we'll kind of compare. So we'll just start with the first category I've listed here, and that's groceries. So for two of us, we projected to spend about $400 a month, or this past month on groceries. And I would say that's high because we eat really high quality food. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we don't shop at the cheapest, we don't shop at Walmart or the cheapest grocery store in town, and the stuff that we do get is pretty good. I would say mostly probably close to top tier food, but a lot of that comes from our farmers and stuff that are in the community here, because we live in a community that has a lot of farmers markets and really big farmers markets too, so it's very readily available to us.
Yeah, and so in college I was saving a lot more money in this category because I was eating noodles and potatoes, but I feel now we eat mostly vegetables. We, when we do eat meat, we meat from the farmer's market. We don't eat the cheapest stuff from Aldi's or whatever. So, our grocery budget, I will admit that if we needed to, we could cut back, I'd say.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's not one of the areas that we've been focusing on, though, because we are controlling it in a different way, I suppose, than financially. We're controlling it based on consumption more than monetarily. We don't waste food or anything like that. Everything that we bring in, I would say 98% of it doesn't ever go to the trash can. So, right.
Yeah. So anyways, we just to get back on track here, we projected $400, and we spent $340 on groceries. So we came in $60 under budget. I will add that when we go to the farmer's market, sometimes we pay with our credit card, but sometimes we do pay in cash. So it would be very likely that we made up that $60 in cash purchases at the farmer's market, and we were actually closer to $400.
Yeah, that's usually the case because some vendors don't take credit cards there, so that's very easy to do, definitely.
Yeah. So, but I would say, like, I don't think we actually spent that much more at the farmer's market because we do use our card quite a bit there. And so the things that we did buy there were kind of like one-off, like I know we bought a cucumber one week that was $1. And that was like the only purchase we made with that vendor. So we gave them $1 in cash, so right around 400 probably realistically, but on our credit card, 339. So then we'll jump to the next food because, some people naturally would be like, well, because I know people who spend way more on their groceries, and so they'd be like, well, if you're able to eat, this amazing diet for that price, you're probably going out to eat a lot. And we do love to go out to eat. We don't hide that fact. So we budgeted $250 for restaurants, and we actually came in at $123, which is kind of funny because I feel like when we do go out to eat, we don't necessarily like hold back. We go to really good places and we get whatever we want to get.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of staple restaurants that we like to hit up, but one of them, the one that we like to go to the most is probably a little more ritzy than some of the other places in town, right? And so when we do go there, yeah, we could easily spend like $50 between the two of us.
And we
no
did.
problem.
That's included in this $123 budget. We went to a super fancy brunch and we got Bloody Marys and we went to the whole 9 yards, and that was close to $50. But then we counteract it with like another one of our favorites is a Thai place nearby, and it's $10 for us to eat there because we order the curry and then we get a side of rice so that we get 2 meals out of it. And we love that too. So we kind of balance it out with like we have some of our staples are a little cheaper, some of our staples are a little more expensive. But when we go to restaurants, we typically go because it's food that we can't cook at home, and we go for an experience. So not saying we couldn't cook a curry at home. We have tried that in the past, but they do it so much better. And then when we go to the ritzier place, it's like, they have a really good chef there, so we're paying for that experience.
Right. We're paying for the higher quality, delicious tasting food, things that we wouldn't normally make, things that they can get away with making in bulk. That would be, take me like 8 hours in the kitchen to make something like that. And sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I'll go like slow roast ribs for like 6 hours, but sometimes I don't feel like doing that, right? Then I'm willing to pay the difference in that.
Yeah,
in that scenario.
And you actually did make ribs this month too. That's why, like, when we say this budget of $339 for groceries, that might either sound like a lot to you for 2 people or not a lot for 2 people, but like we eat some really awesome stuff here. Like we make really good food. I was thinking back on some of the stuff we had, and we made like that really awesome taco salad, and we made some cool pasta dishes with homemade pasta from scratch, and we eat a lot of fish this time of year because it's in season. And so I think like when you look at the quality of food we're eating, that's actually a small price to pay.
Yeah, and some of those things are pretty fun too. If you haven't tried cooking, probably most people have not tried making their own pasta. It's super easy to do, and it takes like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it's
start to finish.
It's 2 ingredients, so I have to eat a gluten-free diet, and gluten-free pasta at the store can be really expensive. But if I get gluten-free flour in bulk, it's a lot cheaper, and it's just flour and eggs. And you mix it together until you get to the right consistency, and you knead it and you make a ball, and then you crank it through the pasta machine. I think from start to finish, it took us maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah, and we have a pasta machine. We got it for Christmas. Somebody got it for Christmas for us. And, so it's just a little hand crank thing. It probably, wasn't tremendously expensive to get something like that. And it's, you run it through the thing twice. It goes through super easy. And then you run it through the cutter piece of it, which is, takes 1 second to assemble this thing. Doesn't take up any space really in the cupboard either. And yeah, boom, we throw it in the boiling pot of water for like 2 minutes if you like it well done, and it's good to go.
Yeah. All right. So basically between restaurants and groceries, we spent, $465-ish. And I also just want to point out that includes like all alcohol. I'm somebody who enjoys wine. I probably have a glass of wine 4 nights a week with dinner, I would say on average. And so like that includes all of that. So that's everything. We didn't spend any other money on food. So now moving on to gas, we budgeted $150 for this, and we actually got away with only spending $102.
I'm actually surprised it's that high because, in our situation, I work from home most of the time. We tend to drive my car more in the summertime because it gets great gas mileage, but is not so great on the ice. But Angela's been biking to work quite a lot over the summer because she's trying to hit her goal. And I don't know, sometimes you were biking 3 or 4 days a week over the last couple of weeks.
So I will say that when I was looking at it, we both did fill up within the first week of the month. So some of this could be residual from May. Mm-hmm. Because typically with my car, I've noticed now it's about 1 tank a month that I'm going through. So about $25. And we did do a couple weekend trips in your car. We went down to Indiana to visit my friends. We went to Midland to see your parents. So those do add up. Weekend trips add up quite a bit. And so, I think for adding that in and being like, all right, summer travel and road trips, keeping it $100 is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that number. So, moving on next to utilities. So we projected $100 and we actually came in over budget at $134. So the reason this was over is because when I was planning this budget, I was just thinking of our electricity and gas bill, which we can usually keep under $100 in the summer. And I forgot that our quarterly garbage bill was due, which is about $50. So we spent $80 on our electricity and gas for the month. And we spent about, the $50 was for our quarterly garbage pickup and recycling. So that's why that one was a little high.
Right, and we're fortunate enough to be in a house that is like pretty efficient, and when it's 85 degrees outside some of the days this last week's, our air conditioner's not running that much. It doesn't even kick on until after lunch, I think, for only a little part of the day, and we open our windows and it's very cool that way. But
yeah,
I think a lot of people maybe have higher electric bills than that.
Well, I think a lot of people do. When I look at $80 a month, that's pretty good in the middle of summer. But some of the things we do is, every night our bedroom windows open and we have the fan running. So we circulate airflow that way. And we do not rely on our air conditioner. We actually only set our house to be 78 degrees, which for a lot of people is pretty hot. And I get that. But I think, crank it up a degree at a time. Like we didn't get to 78 degrees overnight. I'm sure we started at, 74, 75, and we just started creeping it up 1 degree, and then you don't really notice it. You just get to this point and you're comfortable. And, we wear shorts in the house and tank tops, and we don't, growing up, my dad would keep the house a little cooler, and I would wear like a sweater in the summer. There's if you're wearing a sweater in your house in the summer, you're doing something wrong because you're paying all this money to cool it where you're not even comfortable anymore. So I think air conditioning is definitely a big one where like people lived without it for hundreds of years. So crank that temperature up and just try it out.
But again, we live in a climate too that is like kind of balanced. If you're more in the south in the summer, it's pretty ridiculous, right? And having air conditioning all the time is going to spike your bill a little bit. So, again, we set the budget for us based on what we typically see, and even just so we know that we're going to stay under that. For some people, their electric bill may be twice that or more, right? So you have no control over that really if it is a necessity. But Angela's right. If you can crank it back, try it for a little while, see if it makes a big difference in the bill. Try it for 1 month, and if you live, you save maybe $100, right?
Yeah, well, and I think, some people, like in the South, their bills are going to be higher in the summer, but our bills are higher in the winter. So,
certainly.
I think, like, keep that in mind, too. Certainly, if you live in Florida or somewhere in the South and it's really hot right now, be comfortable inside. But then in, the winter months when you're getting that lovely 60-degree weather, then, you're not really running anything. So, I think you can find savings in different seasons depending where you live, but just be kind of aware of it and know where your money's going. Something I've been even doing lately that Brett probably, I know he thinks I'm a little crazy for, is I've been running around and unplugging stuff just to see if it makes a difference in our electricity bill. But he can't be that mad at me when our bill's under $100. So
I'm not saying it's working. I'm not saying it's not.
Still an experiment. I'll report back.
It's probably not working.
So moving on. So we have a dog, which we talked about in a different episode, and she needed her teeth cleaned. She's 4.5 years old, and she had never had her teeth cleaned. She's starting to get some plaque. So for dental work on dogs, it's actually really expensive. So we, looked at different quotes, and we went to our vet, and we were seeing online, some people were spending up to $700 to get their dog's teeth cleaned. So we set a budget of about $400 after talking to our vet. And because our dog is such a champ and got through it so quickly, it was only $280 for the procedure. So this kind of goes back to, pets are expensive and you're going to have random expenses every month that come up, but just try to plan ahead for them as much as you can. And when you work them into your budget, then that way it's not as much of a surprise and you're ready for it. So moving on again, our next category is travel. So we put 250 here. We had some road trips coming up, but that actually fell mostly into gas, so we didn't budget too much for that. And then we are going to Europe soon. And actually, that trip is mostly covered. So we only spent $30 on travel this month, and that was for like a random train in Europe somewhere. But most of that is actually being covered because you have so many points from traveling. And I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, you're lucky you have these points, and so, this isn't realistic. But I will say, I haven't personally looked too much into it because Brett travels so much for work that we kind of get these perks. But there is travel hacking. And if you Google it, there's extensive forums out there about, get this credit card and, do this and you get 50,000 airline miles. And so it's something that even if you don't travel a lot, there are ways to get into this.
Yeah, and I don't travel. Like I said, I work from home most of the time. I don't travel extensively for work, maybe once or twice every couple months, really, depending on what project I'm assigned to. But one of my coworkers recently just did an entire month trek around Europe, and he did it completely on credit card points that he purchased out of the blue. Right, so he did exactly what you're talking about. He looked all this stuff up from scratch. It's not like he was an expert in any of this. So between him and his girlfriend, they opened several different accounts and got all these reward points. And a couple of them require, spending a certain amount on the cards over 3 months before you get the rewards back and stuff. But the trips were completely paid for. The hotels and everything were almost completely paid for. He did the whole trip for next to nothing. So 30 days, he had elevated business class on the trip on the plane over there, nice flights. I think one of them was Virgin Airlines, right? So nicer planes, a lot of leg room. It's not like you were flying Spirit Airlines or one of the,
or Wizz Air if you're in Europe.
Wizz Air if you're in Europe. Yep. That's they load you up on a bus type of airline. So it's definitely doable, and for whatever, maybe you don't want to go overseas, but to get 50,000 points can get you a long way on domestic flights too. It might pay for your flights for 6 months if you want to go on vacation or go to Disney or something like that with your family. So, the points that we're using for this trip for us personally, since I don't travel as much and I didn't play all the credit card games and things like that to open the points. I just had accrued a lot over, I don't know, what is it, 6 years that I've been working with them now,
yeah.
So 7 years almost. So I've just accrued a lot of points over time. So I think we used a few the last time we went, but that was 3 years ago now or more. So I just have extra points laying around from just years of traveling. So.
Well, again, I actually, when I was looking at it, I don't travel for work. I do travel for pleasure, but I certainly don't travel that often. I mean, I do love to travel, so, a couple times a year I'm flying places, but not an insane amount. But from the last time we went to Europe, we had a delayed flight, and so part of that was they just gave me 20,000 miles, and I had no idea what that meant. But then in looking to book this trip this time, that's basically covering a leg of my trip. So these miles really do accrue kind of faster than you think, and if you travel at all or you look into credit card hacking, you can replicate this. We're not doing anything special here. That's kind of the point I'm trying to get across is it's not like, oh, we have this special secret that nobody else has to be able to travel on the cheap. It's out there and the information exists. So if you plan ahead a little bit and you look into some of this, you can replicate what we're doing.
Yeah, and just I'll say one more point on that. My coworker, I think a lot of people are afraid that their credit score is going to tank if you open up a bunch of credit cards or if you look into this or it's bad. From his personal experience, and I'm not saying this is true of every case, but his credit score went up a couple points after he opened all of these cards and things, right? So it's not like it's a 1-for-1. If you open credit cards, your score is going to go down until you have more time with those cards open, right? Is the typical formula that they tell you that they use, right? So that's not necessarily true. It's not weighted in that direction. Again, do the research if that is a factor for you personally.
I will say credit score is the biggest mystery known to man. Like they don't even, they tell you these factors that influence it, but they don't really, like, nobody knows exactly how to calculate your score, and it changes depending which like credit service you go through. So it's definitely something that the more accounts you have, the better, but the shorter your credit score history is, the worse. So it's one of those things that unless you're, in the process of buying a house, in which it's not a good idea to open new credit cards, probably doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things. The other point I do want to mention with that is, if you open this credit card and you're like, great, I'm going to get these 50,000 points if I spend $2,000 in the next 3 months, but spending that $2,000 on that credit card over the next 3 months means that you're making purchases you wouldn't normally make, then I would advise you to not do it.
Certainly not.
So, for us, with our normal spending with groceries and restaurants and gas and all of that, we might be able to hit some of these targets, but if that's not true of your situation, then don't manufacture spending just to get these rewards, because that's not worth it. So...
All right, I think we've beaten that one to death for only being $30 on our list. I think we've talked that one the most.
Yeah, so moving on to the next one, we have internet. And so this one, we kind of know what it is every month. We had $40 budgeted, and it was $40 because we are locked into a year contract with Comcast. So this is just internet. We do not have cable. We do not miss cable. And $40. Like, come on. Some people are spending hundreds of dollars on internet and cable every month.
Well, and I mean, we have like the mover package because we moved into a new house. They were able to transition that deal, right? And that's how they get you on those services. I'm sure everybody is aware of how over the barrel they are with whatever cable provider that they're using. It's one of the biggest jokes in the country, right? Is 80% of the country has only one or two choices for their cable provider, and usually one of those is garbage, right? Or like so slow that you wouldn't ever consider it. So yeah, ours I'm sure will jump back up to like over $80 just for internet as soon as this deal runs out. But
I will say, if you have been paying a certain amount for your service and it, jumps up, call them, because it's the game, right? It's the game of, it's annoying, but if you call them, once a year and you are like, I'm going to cancel my service, they will give you a lower rate. So maybe, from 70, we can't get back to 40, but maybe from 70, we can get to 55, and it's worth it because it's an annoying call, but it's 20 minutes once a year to deal with this. And it's not fun. Nobody likes doing it, but it's the game that they've set up. So play the game, save yourself some money, just suck it up and do it. But I don't think we need to spend any more time on that. Everybody hates cable and internet.
So with cable, though, we have a Netflix line item on here, too. So we pay $10 a month for Netflix for their basic package or whatever. And, so that's what we use when we want to watch anything anyway.
Yep.
Everything's on there. I mean, most old TV shows and everything, TV series are all on there. We watch a lot of new stuff. Their original content is fantastic. I probably don't need to sell Netflix. Probably everybody listening to this podcast is aware that it's a good service.
The point I want to make with it is we tried Hulu. We did a month's service with Hulu, and we watched a couple shows on there, and they were good. For us personally, I say pick one. If you're going to do Netflix, watch what you want. And if you're like, oh, but Hulu has a show that I really want to watch, switch for a month, but then cancel Netflix for that month. So it's kind of annoying, but there's no reason in paying double because you can only watch so many things every month. So pay for the service that you want, watch the shows, and then if you're like, okay, now, there's nothing really interesting me on this service anymore, switch to the other one, but don't pay for both.
Yeah, because, maybe people don't know this, but you can turn them off at any time, and it doesn't change your plan. It doesn't cancel there's no fees. It doesn't cancel your service, right? Just turn it off if you don't want to have it in the month of, August, just turn it off for August and turn it back on in September. Like the systems are totally made to work like that.
Yeah. All right. So just to do a summary, we projected to spend about $1,600 this month. And we actually got away with spending $1,050. So I was really proud of us. We saved some extra money this month. And now I'm sure your question is, oh, wait, but what about your housing? So this is just everything else that we put on our credit card. And then the only other item we have is our mortgage, which is about $1,200 a month. So we definitely upgraded to a newer house. And with that, we knew that we were going to be spending more on a mortgage. I'm not saying everybody needs to spend that much on mortgage or rent, right? That's just the amount that we've chosen. So combined, that was about, $2,250 this month for all of our expenses. Literally everything is out on the table. It was $2,250. So I broke this down because I'm a huge numbers nerd, and I was like, how much would we actually need to make to support this lifestyle? Because we actually think we have a really good lifestyle. Like I'm sure some people are going to be like, oh, well, you don't have any entertainment in there. Well, entertainment comes from, we picked up some bottles of wine with our groceries and we sat out on our back deck because the weather's been great here in Michigan. We don't get that many nice days. So we enjoyed, having a drink on our back deck and socializing. Or we went paddle boarding, which is free for us because we already own the paddle board. So it was just gas money to get there.
Right, and they have movies in the park in the summer and stuff like that, and free concerts all over town. I mean, there's so many entertaining things to do if you look for them that you don't have to spend money for. But there's a lot of cool things you can do with money too, right? We're always keeping an eye out for free services that are actually adding value to our life, right?
Yeah, well, and like hiking and walking, there's so many great parks here, and like I said, we only get so many nice summer days in Michigan, so we're going to be outside as much as possible. So that's probably why our entertainment's a little bit lower. We didn't go to any movies because I'm not going to sit in a movie theater for 2 hours when it's a nice day. So, our entertainment was a little lower this month, but we did travel more too. So on weekends we were, visiting friends out of state or visiting family. And so, I think in that way our entertainment is kind of rolled into different categories, but we didn't have to spend money doing these things. But anyways, going back to my point, so we spent $2,250 and I was like, how much do we need to earn to maintain this lifestyle that we really enjoy? And the answer would be, if we were both working 40 hours a week, we would need to make $9 an hour, which really isn't that much higher than minimum wages right now. So that's really awesome for me to hear, because I was like, okay, so if I lose my job tomorrow, I can literally go get any job and maintain the lifestyle I have. And in all honesty, we don't usually have a $280 vet bill every month.
And is that $9 before taxes or after taxes?
That is before taxes.
Okay,
so that
great.
is
even better.
The earning rate that we would need to make.
Cool.
So, and, obviously it kind of brings us full circle to, fortunately, we, both went to college and we have good careers, so we make quite a bit more than $9 an hour. So we saved the rest. So our savings rate this month was really, really high, which is great for us, right? Because we're saving money, we're getting ahead, and we don't feel like we're sacrificing in any way. At least I don't feel like we're sacrificing in any way.
No, I don't feel like we're missing out on anything, not doing anything that we would be doing otherwise, right? We're not cutting back and making our lives a struggle, right? And causing stress on ourselves trying to save this money. It's just pretty normal for us at this point. So.
Yeah. But I think, the point that I wanted to make and the reason I wanted to do this is, when you get to the point where you've made these cuts, you don't miss it. So, our gas being $100 this month, there were times in the past that we spent, we both filled up a tank a week, and so we were spending $400 on gas. We don't miss that at all because, we've made it a priority to bike more, and we biked to the farmer's market and we biked to brunch this past weekend. And so we're doing these things where, we had a lot of fun biking to brunch, and actually was very entertaining for us, and it was cheaper.
It was so fun. Let me tell you how fun it was.
Maybe I like biking a little bit more than Brett does.
Maybe I'll get a new seat on my bike and we'll see how that changes things.
Well, all right. So I think I've kind of said what I needed to say. Do you have anything else to add here?
I think we covered everything here. Yeah. I mean, we have $0 for yoga on here too, but it could really
I did some of my own yoga, but I'm actually, I did exercise in other ways, so.
That's true. And I mean, that goes back to the entertainment discussion of if you want to try new things and do things like that. I'm a big proponent of like YouTube, and like we have a garden in the backyard that we started for like almost no money, right? And we've been tendering that all summer. So now we have like 3 tomato plants and they all have 29 tomatoes on it. So we actually did something right there. So we're doing things like that. So
well, and going back to your whole like you can find free activities, like we like going to the concerts in the park on Friday nights, but there's actually free yoga opportunities that have popped up around town too. So if you kind of key into these things, I think you'll be surprised at how much free entertainment you can find. For me, I've been frequenting the library a lot this summer too and getting some new books to read. So there's a lot out there that you get just as much happiness without spending any money. So look into these opportunities, check them out, because I think you'll surprise yourself at what you can do. And also, I'm curious to hear from other people, like, do you spend a lot more than us, a lot less than us? I'm kind of curious, because I think we're doing pretty good, but I'm sure some people would look at our budget and be like, holy cow, you spent $400 on groceries. I feed my family of 2 an amazing, diet, and we only spend $200. So I'm curious to always hear more money saving tips, and anything really. Any feedback would be awesome and would be very interesting for me to hear.
Yeah, and just to see like what are other people spending. I mean, I know most people probably spend larger budgets than us because we're pretty fortunate in a lot of areas, right? Like to reduce some of these categories of spending. So, how much are people spending in their other areas, and are there areas that you think you can reduce it in?
Yeah. Well, all right. Thanks, guys. Like I said, the podcast is not going anywhere, so this kind of concludes our whole budget talk for a while, unless we get some awesome user feedback about it. But we have some really exciting topics coming up for you guys, so stay tuned and catch us next week. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Money in the Bank. Make sure to subscribe to us on the iTunes or Stitcher app so that you get weekly alerts every time we post a podcast. Or if you want, you can visit my website, moneyinthebankpodcast.com. And if you want to reach out with any questions or further comments, please email me at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Money in the bank.